homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm, or welcome back. Today in the kitchen, we are making frozen yogurt. And I went to a local grocery store yesterday, meaning to take a picture of what a carton of frozen yogurt costs to indicate how much money you could save by making it yourself. And I couldn't even find frozen yogurt. So evidently frozen yogurt is no longer a thing. We have migrated back around to full fat everything and keto. And so nobody is actually selling frozen yogurt because I think the sales probably tanked. That said, I love frozen yogurt. I think it's delicious. It's full of probiotics from the yogurt that's in the dairy, and it's not quite as fatty and rich as regular ice cream is. And you can play around with how much sugar is in it. Typically, commercial frozen yogurt is usually a little bit higher in sugar than ice cream is because it's quite a bit lower in fat. I guess frozen yogurt tends to be around 10% fat, and ice cream by actual law needs to be at least 22% fat, so dramatically different in fat content. And I think to make up for that and to make up for some of the mouthfeel, they add quite a bit of sugar. But the thing about this is you can control the amount of sugar that goes into this. And so this original recipe calls for 3/4 of a cup of sugar, but you could easily decrease that, or you could use a half and half sugar and alternative sweetener substitute, or if you were feeling really brave, you could probably just do a complete alternative substitute sugar like stevia or allulose or something like that. If you do dramatically reduce the sugar or change the type of sweetener that's in this, it is going to change the texture. Some of what that sugar is doing is preserving the mouthfeel of the yogurt and changing the freezing temperature a little bit. What makes homemade ice cream and homemade frozen yogurt a little bit tricky to get right is they tend to get really icy if you decrease the amount of fat or if you decrease the amount of sugar. This recipe is pretty foolproof. We really like it. We've made it this summer with both blueberry, and then we just recently did a second batch that was with marionberries, which are a type of blackberry, and both of them are just, so delicious. The tricks to this are a couple. One is it calls for what's called Lyle's golden syrup. This is a product that's out of the UK, and it basically tastes like a liquid version of a brown sugar. And it's a little hard to find. We used to have a local grocery store that carried this, and they've since stopped carrying it. And so if I want to use this, I have to order it on Amazon. And I think this is really the only recipe that I actually use this in. However, you could easily just substitute corn syrup for this. Basically, it's got something in it called invert sugar, and I don't understand all of the chemistry, and it's probably not worth taking a deep dive into anyway. But that invert sugar changes how the ice crystal structure forms in the yogurt itself when it's frozen. And so having a little bit of this in here helps with texture, but you could use corn syrup instead, either just light corn syrup or dark corn syrup if you wanted that little bit of caramel note that this brings. And by the way, corn syrup off the shelf in the grocery store is not the same as high fructose corn syrup that everybody is all up in arms about because it's in every off-the-shelf commercial product anymore. It's not the same thing, and you're only using a total of 3 tablespoons, so not a huge deal. The other ingredient that's in this is gelatin, so just plain gelatin. And again, that's in there for mouthfeel. That gelatin causes the structure to thicken up in a way that keeps the ice crystals from forming and it getting really icy. So the gelatin is definitely a must-have. The other thing is I'm going to use in this recipe, you'll see me use this. It's a Cuisinart ice cream maker. And what this is this is a canister. Can you guys hear that? It has a liquid, basically kind of an antifreeze in between the inside chamber and the outside chamber, and it freezes really cold. And you then put this on the ice cream maker, and it's just like the old-fashioned ice cream makers that you've probably seen where there's a canister and there's a disher inside that turns. And the idea is that this stays frozen long enough for it to freeze the contents of your yogurt. I had a really inexpensive version of this that an uncle sent me for Christmas one year that was a little hand-cranked one, and I think it was about half the size of this, that I think was probably a $25 or $30 product. So you can find smaller, inexpensive versions of this. I'll put this up on the screen if it's still being made with the price. This was a America's Test Kitchen winner years ago, and I know it was under $100, so not a huge thing. We have an old-fashioned not sure if we still have it. We might have gotten rid of it. We have an old-fashioned ice cream maker that is the traditional kind with the big thing, and you use ice and salt and stir and stir and stir. It does have a motor, and that was a wedding gift. And we found that we never used it, mostly because it was a production to get that thing out, to put all of the ice and salt in there. And then it took, a half an hour to 45 minutes to actually churn the mixture into ice cream. And then it made a lot. And this is nice because this makes probably about a quart. So not a huge amount. And I like that you just put this in the freezer and it's in there ready to go the next time you want to make ice cream or yogurt. And so very easy and not a lot of production and not this huge piece of equipment that you have to store. However, all of that said, I think you could probably just pour this into a container and then put it in your freezer and then check it every half an hour and give it a stir until it starts to freeze up. You're probably not gonna get the same exact consistency because you're not gonna be whipping in air into the product the same way you would with something like this, but I'm sure that would also work. Or you could just get popsicle molds or improvise some popsicle molds and turn these into popsicles instead of turning them into yogurt, in terms of a scoopable yogurt. So lots of different options with this, but this recipe is really delicious. It's really forgiving. You can use it with pretty much any kind of fruit, and you've got full control over all of the ingredients. So homemade frozen yogurt, let's get started. So here's all of our ingredients. I've got 3/4 of a cup of blueberries. I love a little bit of lemon extract with all things blueberry, and so I'm including that. Our Greek yogurt, our Lyle's golden syrup, some plain Knox gelatin, unflavored of course, and then sugar. You can use this with any fruit. So any summer fruit you happen to have on hand totally works with this. These blueberries were not super juicy, and so it's a little bit of a challenge here. And then of course I've got a bowl where the bottom isn't flat because the bowl's too small, but here we are. You want to mash your fruit enough to release some of the juice, because what we're gonna do is sprinkle the gelatin on top of that fruit, let it rehydrate for 5 minutes or so, and then we're gonna microwave it in order to dissolve that gelatin. And so you need a little bit of liquid here in order to get that gelatin to dissolve. And so you've gotta mash your fruit up a little bit. So here's our gelatin. We only need a teaspoon, so not a full packet. And you're just gonna sprinkle that as evenly as you can in order to not have it clump up, because it will clump up. Meanwhile, while that's rehydrating, we're gonna measure out our Greek yogurt, and I have a whole video on how I made this. And then this is some of the cream on top that was left over that didn't get incorporated into the Greek yogurt, and I thought I might as well add it to this, so I just went ahead and threw it in here because extra richness, why not? We need a total of 2 2/3 cups of Greek yogurt. And then 3/4 of a cup of sugar, a pinch of salt, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of lemon extract. Again, totally optional, but I really love blueberries and lemon together. And then our 5 minutes is up, so now we're gonna microwave our blueberries until they're warm through and juicy. We've got 3 tablespoons of that Lyle's syrup going into here. And this looks a little chunky just because I've had this bottle for a long time, and so it was a little bit crystallized. And then here's the blueberries after 30 seconds. They're really not heated through and juicy enough. And so I'm giving everything a stir, and then I'm gonna microwave it a second time, and then I end up microwaving it a third time as well. You really want this gelatin to dissolve. And if there's not enough liquid in there, it is not gonna dissolve, and then you're gonna have little bits of gelatin in your yogurt, and that's not good. And then give this a good stir. It doesn't have to be perfect because it is gonna churn and continue to mix once it's in the ice cream maker, but you want it to basically get as stirred as, reasonable. And then I'm gonna stow this in my refrigerator, because once it's mixed, you need to bring it down to about 40 degrees or it's gonna take a very long time to actually freeze once you put it in the ice cream maker. So I think I left this overnight. So here we are the next day. We're ready to make ice cream. We've got our frozen canister in the ice cream maker, so that came out of my freezer. And then I'm pouring in my ice cold yogurt mixture while the ice cream maker is going. This is what it looks like right at the beginning. This is probably somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes later. It doesn't take that long. This is pretty fast. And then it'll actually stop churning when it's as frozen as it's going to get. And so basically at this point, what we have is soft serve. So turn the machine off, and then the tricky part is just getting the yogurt off of the dasher. And sometimes I wish I was still a small child because you really want to lick the beaters on this. And you can see some of those blueberries are still chunky, which is nice. These are 1 pint containers, and so I ended up with about a quart. 1 quart is 2 pints. Probably a little over a quart. These were really, really full. And this dasher is awkward as all get out in terms of the shape, so it takes a while to get everything off of it. And then there is our gorgeous soft serve frozen yogurt. Obviously, you could serve it at this point if you wanted to. I'm going to put lids on and stash that in the freezer until it's nice and solid. And theoretically, a serving is a half a cup, so this makes 8 servings, and there you have it. Homemade frozen yogurt where you're controlling all the ingredients. Absolutely delicious. Thanks for watching, Tribe. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share. I have new content coming out every week.